with the biggest majority in Parliament, 30,000, that's not 30,000 votes, that's a majority of 30,000. A man with a 30,000 majority that's apparently unelectable. The next speaker is very unusual in politics because he literally has no ego. And myself and many others who were elected for the first time on the 7th of May this year, thanks to your help, thanks to the help of many others, we met Jeremy Summers for the first time just after May the 7th. And I can truly say he's been a real help to the new MPs. No ego whatsoever, no lecturing. He treats everybody as an equal, and he's a brilliant person to call a friend and a comrade. He is the leader, whether he likes to admit it or not, of this fantastic movement that we're all part of at the moment. So give the biggest possible cheer that you can. Welcome to Leeds, Mr. Jeremy Corbyn.
Settle down, please. First of all, a huge thank you for giving up a lovely Saturday evening to come here to the Armouries and take part in political discourse. It's great, and it shows that the world is not full, totally, of cynics or people that disregard the views and joys of working together. The world is actually populated by a lot of people who want to live together, work together, dream together, hope together, and achieve together. Thank you for inviting me tonight. I want to say thank you to all the others that have spoken this evening, because all the meetings we do are about involving other people and expanding ideas. That is what this campaign is about. And it's a very, very serious campaign as well. Richard, our chair this evening, our host this evening, if you will, MP for Leeds, newly elected, absolutely brilliant comrade, brilliant MP. You should be very proud of having Richard Burgon as your MP. And he is somebody that brings something very, very special to Parliament. Knowledge, passion, principle, ideas and humility and humanity, and I'm very proud to call him a friend and very proud to work with him on this and many, many other issues. The other speakers you heard tonight, Mohammed Taj, first non-white president of the TUC, and I agree with you, we shouldn't have to wait 145 years. Because both Mohammed and I are blessed with a very long life, but I don't see us lasting another 145 years. Well, you might, but oh yes, okay. But fantastic, and thanks for what you did, not just as President TUC, but the words you gave us this evening. James, your passion from the NUS, the way in which the NUS has now become an organisation campaigning for students, campaigning for education, campaigning in partnership with other people to achieve education for all. Thanks for what you said tonight and the way you put it. Thanks for what you said, and thanks for reminding us that solidarity matters at all times. Leeds raised £250,000 for the miners during that strike. My borough, a smaller borough than Leeds, raised £100,000 during that strike. There was real solidarity all over the country as the Tories, led by Margaret Thatcher, set about destroying the industrial base of this country, and as a prelude to that, trying to destroy the trade union movement in the process. They didn't, they won't, and they can't, and they won't succeed this time. And Kate, for the points that you made about the way in which we measure inequality, we measure injustice, and the cynicism with which many so-called economists approach the issue of what society is for and what society is about. Your book with Richard Wilkinson is absolutely brilliant. It's changed an awful lot of people's thinking. It's had a huge influence on the way in which policy making is made by my own local authority and by many others, because you're saying, actually, inequality is a terrible waste of time, energy and resources that we should all benefit from. Thank you very much for that and the way you put it this evening. Our campaign is a campaign which started in extreme difficulty. Many of us felt that post May the 7th, what we needed was a serious and long debate within the Labour Party and the unions about why we lost the election and how we policy change it. There are many reasons we didn't win the election, but one of which, a big one of which was, I didn't hear that, but I've got very poor hearing in that ear, but it was probably friendly, was that we were offering an economic strategy that was essentially austerity light, when we should have been offering something very different about conquering injustice, poverty and inequality in our society. When the leadership issue came up, that was the chosen path by the party's national executive. And so, after some discussion and some debate, Richard particularly, and others of the new MPs in particular, said, we have got to seize this moment. We have got to seize this moment to allow the party, its supporters, its friends, the entire Labour movement to have a serious opportunity to decide the direction we're going. Are we going to go down that arid and ultimately unsuccessful road of trying to say, well, we're not as bad as the Tories, but we do believe that the deficit has got to be paid off by an arbitrary date, and we do believe that there has to be suffering to achieve that? Or do we offer something different? Richard and others were very strong on having a leadership challenge. It was difficult because we knew we had to get the signatures of at least 35 Labour MPs. We didn't get them to begin with, we got 11 in fact, which is less than 35. Frankly, quite a lot less than 35. And then the next day we had a big surge, we went up to 12. So that was when I nominated myself. And then it grew, and it grew, because some colleagues in Parliament who don't share Richard and my view of the world, but nevertheless wanted a democratic choice before the party members, and frankly felt a bit embarrassed that members of Parliament should be the gatekeepers of what ought to be an open democratic process within the party. And so some of them nominated, and I'm grateful to them for that, and I thank them for it personally for that. And then there was something very remarkable and very interesting. Who says there aren't a lot of people out there interested in politics, ideas and process? There are. Over a period of a week, there was a Facebook campaign, there was a Twitter storm, there was a text message storm, there was an email storm, there was a phone storm of people saying, look, should you really be deciding who can or cannot be a candidate for this position? Shouldn't we have a say in that? And that persuaded other parliamentary colleagues to make the nominations, and with a huge amount of time to spare, in fact 1 minute 50 seconds to spare, we made it across the line and we got a place on the ballot paper. And since then, it's been a very interesting and fascinating time. I always thought there were a whole lot of people out there that were totally put off by the politics of celebrity, the politics of personality, the politics of personal abuse, intrusive journalism, and frankly, just nastiness between politicians. I don't care what anybody says about anybody else. I never respond, I don't respond. Our campaign doesn't do personal, we don't expect it, and we certainly don't give it back. Life is too short, the issues are too important. We want people brought together in hope, not cynicism and abuse. and our party was founded by very brave people in the 19th century. It was founded on the shoulders of even more brave people earlier in the 19th century. The Tolpuddle martyrs, who were criminalised for swearing an oath under a tree to say they would stand together against the untrammelled power of landowners where they lived in that little Dorset village. Others, the Chartists who marched. Others who went through terrible privations trying to form unions against very strong industrialists and mill owners. Those in rural Britain who stood up against the Enclosure Acts, which destroyed their livelihood and forced them into slums in urban cities. Those that stood for justice during the Industrial Revolution and bravely founded unions. Those that stood for democracy. That democracy brought us, initially, the Factories Act, later brought us education, later, on the shoulders of great women like Mary Wollstonecraft, brought us the suffragettes and those that campaigned for the rights of women to vote. Every stage that democracy has developed, social progress has come after that. It is an historical process. It's an unstoppable historical process, and we should be proud of those that went before us and proud to learn from them, to develop those ideas into the rest of this century to bring about the justice and equality that they dreamt of, they fought for, and this generation and the next generation can, will and must achieve. We don't have to live in a world of the haves and the have-nots. We don't have to live in a country of the haves and the have-nots. We should cherish everybody, value everybody, and give everybody a chance in life. Together and supported this campaign, I'm very grateful to them. The Bakers Union, ASLEF, RMT, TSSA, all three rail unions, get that. All on the same rails together. Communication Workers Union, Fire Brigades Union, Unite, my own union, Unison, thank you, and our General Secretary, Dave Prentice, sent a very strong message of support on behalf of the union to the rally in Bradford last night, and all the others that have come together to support our campaign. Why? Why are they supporting it? Because they want democracy, yes, but because they want some answers to the issues that we face. This is a time when we've got to put forward a wholly different economic strategy. Austerity is built on the problems of 2008-9, the banking crisis. The banking crisis brought about by subprime mortgage crisis in the USA, brought about by deregulation, brought about by greed, and brought about in part by the way in which the banking class behaved. But I share a thought with you. I cannot understand how it is that somebody that is on a salary, a telephone number salary of many hundreds of thousands per year, can only work with the incentive of getting a bonus at the end of the year of several £1,000,000. I don't fully understand it. Apparently, you have to get a big bonus because it rewards talent. Well, if talent is crashing a bank and crashing an economy, I suppose they deserve a reward for that. But it seems to me a perverse kind of incentive. I know people in my community who work very hard. I know care workers who work very hard, looking after people in difficult situations. I know nurses in my local hospital who work very hard. I know the people that sweep the streets where I live who work very hard. I know many people who work very hard in our society. They might not be earning telephone number salaries. They might indeed be earning very low salaries. They don't get and don't expect a bonus at the end of the year. They expect to be rewarded reasonably for doing a decent job. Why is it you have to threaten the poor and entice the rich to get them to work? Very hard and long about how we develop our economy. Yes, of course we need public services, and I'll come on to that in a moment. Of course we need finance to fund health and welfare and all the other things. But we also need an economy that works for everybody. That means the deindustrialisation that the Tories pushed for in the 1980s, in their brutal period of Margaret Thatcher and John Major's government, we're still paying a price for. We have an economy over-reliant on services and financial services and under-reliant on manufacturing industry, industrial processes, development and sustainable green energy jobs. Therefore, we are suggesting that we put money into a national investment bank which can improve the infrastructure of our society, that can build the housing we need within our society, and can develop the things we're very good at inventing in this country, but very bad at developing through to production and process. That seems to me a good start. You don't cut your way to prosperity, you grow your way to prosperity. And that is what we're suggesting. And people that say our anti-austerity message is unreasonable and unrealistic, well, the European Central Bank has just shown how brutal it can be towards the people of Greece. And it's the people of Greece who suffer, not the banking community of Greece that's suffering in this process. But we've also shown that the developing economy is actually something that's very good. And if you think that we are isolated alone in some extreme backwater on this, why is it that 2 Nobel Prize-winning economists have supported our proposals, supported our ideas, and say that what we're saying is actually something very important, intelligent and sensible as a way forward in developing our economy? But you have to unleash talent. I meet many students, graduates, who've worked hard, been to school, been to college, got their A-levels, got to university, got through, got a degree. Really hard work, real achievement, and we applaud them for it. And what's the prize? A debt. A debt, £50,000, £60,000. My generation had the chance of free university education. Is it the place of this generation, or indeed the generation just behind, to say we'll pull up the ladder on the youngsters of today and saddle them with debt rather than give them opportunity? And so, yes, education is expensive. Yes, it does cost a lot of money. But I see EMA as an investment for all of us. It gives working class kids a chance to go on and go to university. And I see the prospect of increasing corporation tax by 0.5%, 0.5%, as a price well worth paying to pay for university fees. And I think in education we have to think very carefully about what we're doing. It seems to me that we're going in some very unfortunate directions. Preschool education is very, very important. Socialisation of preschool-age children is very important. All children should have that opportunity of going there. I'm concerned about the way in which we've constantly devalued local education authorities and what they achieve. I'm concerned that we have unaccountable not primary schools, unaccountable free schools and unaccountable academies. Cannot we, once again, strengthen the family of the local education authority and refund our adult education services? Because education is not, learning for life is important. Learning to understand society is important. Training for jobs and work and skills is obviously very important. But there's also a value in opening horizons and widening minds through education. Adult education, at its best, provides that opportunity for everyone who may not have achieved so much in school to be able to achieve something else later in life. If somebody's educated, somebody's experienced, somebody's qualified, we all benefit. We benefit if there's a good doctor. We benefit if there's a good engineer maintaining the train we're travelling on. We benefit if there's a good architect designing our buildings. We all benefit from an educated society. And so it does cost, I get that, but I disagree with those who say that we should somehow or other say to graduates, you must pay a special graduate tax. I think back to discussing this matter one night with Tony Benn, and he said to me, Jeremy, you know what? We should tax people because they're wealthy, not because they're educated. That ought to be a couple of other points I want to make. If I asked you if you all supported the National Health Service, you'd all say yes. If I asked you if you wanted the Health and Social Care Act repealed, I'm sure you would all say yes. If I asked you if you wanted an end to the internal market and the competitive way in which hospitals compete against each other, in the way in which the private sector comes in to hollow out our National Health Service, I'm sure you would all say yes. Because we have made some big mistakes. We've hollowed it out with the internal market, we've hollowed it out with private finance initiative and the millstone that is around the neck of so many hospitals. And if we allow the Tories to carry on with what they're doing to our NHS, then it's going to become the health service of last resort, and you'll find the creeping privatisation and the creeping private medicine industry will take over, and the NHS will become the place like the emergency room in the USA you go when you can't get to go anywhere else or can't afford to go anywhere else. Let's be proud of an NHS at the point of use free and available for all, and be prepared to campaign for it and say so. The other point I want to make is about the way we've allowed our language to be confused and taken by the Tories. Thatcher grasped the language of freedom when she meant the opposite. Michael Gove grabbed lots of things and destroyed them, and the current language used by our Chancellor of the Exchequer about the living wage is the opposite of the living wage. It's some kind of abuse of our language. The late Richard Hoggart wrote a wonderful book about the uses and abuses of literacy. I wish you were around to comment on that today. However, there is an abuse of language that goes on, and that's in respect of the poorest and most marginalised within our society. Why do we get involved in abuse of people who legitimately claim that to which they're entitled through the welfare state? Why do we tolerate so many people living in desperate poverty? Why do we tolerate the fact that many people have been through crises in their lives and end up in a bad place, end up sleeping rough, end up being drug addicts, end up being alcoholics, end up being marginalised, forgotten and left around the place? Can't we be, as a society, slightly more human and understand what happens to somebody else could happen to each of us? When I talk to people who've been marginalised in their lives, I find people, ex-servicemen who weren't properly supported when they came out of the forces, I find people who've not been properly cared for, and I find people who are victims of all kinds of difficulties. Cannot we measure our success in the future by the way in which we close the gap between the richest and the poorest? The fact we don't have people sleeping on the streets, the fact we don't have children and their families being forced to move every 6 months by the housing crisis from one short old tenancy to another. Cannot we instead recognise the value to all of us of a universal state that cares for the welfare of all, and recognise we deal with the housing crisis not by leaving it to the market to solve it, but a housing crisis that can be solved by providing jobs, hope and investment for those that can work to build the council houses we need in order to end the housing crisis. The last points I want to make about this in our campaign are this. We came together in order to contest one point of one election within the Labour Party, and it's a very important position and it's a very important point. But it's also about unleashing ideas and changing the way we do politics and the way we do policy. In the past couple of weeks we've proposed, and they are proposals, papers on the north of England, on economy, on women, on housing, on environment. We've got many more coming. We've got one on housing also, and many more coming. These are ideas ideas that we want people to respond to, ideas we want people to take part in, ideas of a different, better way of running our society. And it's very exciting. Our proposals on the environment stem from a fear we all have of the environmental crises around the world. The numbers of people that are refugees from environmental crises, from floods, from deforestation, from desertification, from many reasons that people are indeed refugees from it. And how we live in a sustainable world and look to live with our natural resources and people and nature and natural society rather than destroying it. And so environmentalism is in part a state of mind, but it's also about how we do things. Use the technology to use less energy. Use the technology to insulate our homes. Use the technology to develop our economy. Use the technology for all of that. But also recognise there are finite limits to what you can do to this planet. The bee crisis of today is in effect the canary in the coal mine that's telling us there is danger out there. And so you don't leave it all to the market. You don't leave it all to the market. Instead, you look to how you plan things, how you do things, how you grow things, and how you protect our natural world. And it's not just in rural areas, because actually it's the poorest working class communities in big cities all around the world who suffer the environmental consequences of pollution first. It's the rich who experience it last. It is an issue that faces all of us. And so I urge you to comment and read on what we put forward, but also to comment and read on the international issues that we face today. I don't believe in nuclear weapons or nuclear war. I want us to be really secure and not replace Biden in 2016, but use that opportunity, those funds and those resources to develop alternative jobs and alternative industries. Don't lose the brilliance and the skills that of those that are currently making those things. Keep those skills and those brilliance to make something more socially responsible and useful for all of us. And the last point I would make is that the effects of war. Richard and others talked about Afghanistan, about Iraq, about Libya, about Mali, and there's many other wars we can talk about. Those wars have victims and victors. People have made a lot of money out of wars. George Bush thinks he won them all, but George Bush is a slightly delusional character at times, so it's okay. But who lost those wars? Those that died, those that are refugees, those that are still refugees, those that are trying to survive in refugee camps from the wars that beget the wars that beget the wars. The war in Syria, the war in Libya, and all the others. All those people trying to survive in the midst of the most terrible crises. Those that are dying in the Mediterranean trying to escape. Those in Europe who are trying to find some contribution and some security and some safety in their lives. None of this is easy. I'm not pretending any of it's easy. But can't we approach issues from a human and humanitarian point of view? These are fellow human beings who are going through the most desperate period of their lives. There are more people suffering dislocation on this planet now than at any time in recorded history, even more than at the end of the Second World War. It does require a response, and a responsible one at that, from the richest industrial countries in the world that do have the capacity and the wherewithal to do something to assist. It does require a real intervention, not military intervention, but an intervention for peace, to bring about peace processes and justice, and to bring some justice and humanity to the world. I conclude with this thought. This summer has been an unprecedented number of activities and meetings. We've had 21 hustings already about this election campaign, and I've enjoyed every one of them. We've also now had, I think this is, I've lost count, but I think this is the 45th public meeting we've done in the past 5 weeks. and they're getting bigger and bigger as people are more and more interested in what's being said. So, what we're doing tonight is recognising where we've come from. What we're doing tonight is recognising the value, the humanity and the strength of each other. What we're doing tonight is recognising that optimism can triumph over cynicism, that hope can triumph over defeat, that democracy can triumph over oppression, that we as people want to figure and help to figure the kind of society we live in the future, where we all do genuinely care and support for each other, where we do generally expect everyone to care for us as well, and we expect to make that contribution. Call it what you like, use the S word if you want, I don't mind. But above all, let's be proud of what we're about. Proud of what we, as a Labour movement and a party, were founded to achieve. Proud of the National Health Service, of the Human Rights Act, the Equalities Act, and many of the good things we've done. But don't go down the arid road of saying the victims of austerity must pay the price of the greed of others. Instead, develop an economy and a society that genuinely works for all, so those with the deepest pockets help out the most. Those with the shallowest pockets are the ones that will help the most. Thank you very much for inviting me tonight.